I'm so sorry, rain stop play. We're back. Because when the umbrella gets wet, oh, I don't know, we have to fold it up before it gets wet. So we're back, and it's BA Day. And if you're just joining me now, do just watch the quick 5-minute video before, because it'll explain what we're doing. And I'm just getting this back onto the screen, and I'm just going to put that there. So, Granny Alice and Grampy Raymond, who we've met. Wait for a few people to come online. David, are you still there? Alan, come back. Jacqueline, come back. So, isn't it weird? Where are you all? Have you all left me? So, isn't it weird how I come in from the house and I just for a minute thought, oh, I'll just go and see if I can find the old photograph album really quickly while I was having to fold the chairs and put the cushions away. It is actually going to really storm now, so the internet's a bit wobbly. Oh, who's here? Identify yourself. It's BA Day. Yes, I've got the old scarf on. So I went into the kitchen and threw into the lounge, and literally I thought I'll just pick one of the old albums. I don't know why, I just picked one. I didn't know what was in it. And that is the picture that was in the front cover, and that's Granny with her uniform on, out in the fields with doing the straw bales or the hay bales or whatever, with a pitchfork there. Look, you can see her. Absolutely incredible. That's 1944. There's nothing else marked on it. Doesn't say where she was, but that's 1944. And the other photo, which is very strange because it's not actually from this album. This old piece, we were flooded about 20 years ago and we lost everything, and this was salvaged and ripped out of another album. But it is actually one of the pages that has their wedding picture. And there we go. And they were married in their uniforms. I'm not sure whether is that focusing all right. So there's Raymond and Alice in their, I think that's before their wedding. And this one is of, oh, I don't think I can get that out. This one is of Grampy Raymond with his two best friends that he served with in the war, side by side. And Grampy actually rang the bells in Bethlehem Church on Christmas Day in 1945. What an amazing thing to be able to do. He climbed the bell tower and he was invited to go and ring the bells. So that was amazing. I think it was 44. So many, it's another generation. They've been gone for years and years and years, and so you rely on all those kind of family memories. But we were saying earlier on, it's just great that everybody's having these little street parties and they're all getting together with their families and their children. And I was saying to you that they used to go to London quite a lot. It's great to share all these things because you don't actually think about them at the time, and there's lots of memories here. But they did used to go to London for the Trooping of the Colour, and I have lots of memories of that because I actually went with her. Bonjour encore. Sorry, Jacqueline, I'm sorry. We had to restore the communication because I got thrown off the terrace because of a storm. And I was trying to prove the point that, you know, our ancestors would have been out there in all weathers, and there's me getting packed away because there's a few drops of rain. Anyway, there she is. There's Alice in a LANDARMY uniform doing all her thing with her hay ricks and her, you know, and that is their wedding picture. So there we go. And I just thought I'll read a page. So you can, this is her memoirs, and as I say, she said that she didn't want to publish them. She didn't want anybody to read them until after she'd gone, and then we could do whatever we wanted with them. And it's been a long, long time and a lot of years. And at that time, I didn't even think I would ever write anything, not even the back of an envelope, let alone a book. Hi, Floris. So for all those of you who are joining today, I was doing my we are doing our book reading. It's the final instalment of A Hotel Full of Dreams tonight, and that's at 10:15 as normal. But I wondered whether if I read a page, the group, all of you who want to join, if you like it, we can carry on, and we can. That'll be the next piece of reading, and this will be the memoirs of which is quite apt for VE Day. And I should have realised, because we could have put the last episode of Hotel Full of Dreams for tomorrow, and we could have read this tonight, but we'll finish that first. So settle down with your cups of tea or your glass of wine or your G&T, whichever country, whichever hour, whichever place you are in. And this is called The Past is a Strange Country. This is not the story of my life. It's just a collection of memories of the things that happened to me during the war years. 6 years of experiences that would never have happened under any other circumstances. They stand out like an isthmus, partly cut off from normal life, but leaving a way of retreat. The war eventually ended, and I took that way back into a life that embraced the past and went on into the future, but still somehow leaving those 6 years standing alone. I find now that the passing years have taken the sharp edge of memory away. The unpleasant, hurtful things are sometimes remembered but never agonised over. And in this little memory book, like the sundial, I shall only record the sunny hours. For the first year of the war, I worked and lived in Glasgow, but this was a passing thing which now seems of no importance, a preparation perhaps for the years to come, for I learned to stand on my own 2 feet and face life as an individual instead of part of a family. That year ended on a Friday morning early in September, and seems now almost like the turning of a page in the book of life. The page was new and clean and white, but very soon to be covered by new experiences, even a few blots and smears. Having been rejected on medical grounds by the WAF, I had joined the Women's LANDARMY. I sat on the train from Glasgow to Lanark with my worldly possessions on the rack above, trying to look grown up as if the journey meant nothing to me, but with butterflies in my tummy and the book on my knee unread. I had made one special friend in Glasgow, Jenny Forrest. She was married. Her husband was a bank clerk who had been called into the army soon after the outbreak of war. Jenny also had a brother who was a farmer near a little village called Thankerton between Lanark and Peebles, a delectable spot. Her mother-in-law kept the village post office in Thankerton, and this was my destination. Jenny had sold her home, was having a couple of weeks' holiday with her mother-in-law, and then the 2 of us were going as land girls to Cloburn Wood Farm, owned by her brother Johnny Barr and his wife Nancy. But their part in this story comes after that first weekend. I have only a dim recollection of my first arrival in Lanark. I seem to remember that I had too much luggage and not enough hands, but people were kind in wartime, and soon I was on the bus to Thankerton. It was a glorious run. Summer comes late in Scotland, and I would say on that sunny September morning I saw the countryside at its perfect best. In no time at all we had reached the village, and there was not a soul about. So at this point you have to bear with me, because I need to just turn the page, which involves a few clickety-clicks. It's very old scanning, and I have no real idea of where. Now, can I arrow it? That's it. Okay, page 2. I'll just read. Shall I read one more page? Shall I read one more page? We'll carry on a little bit. Please feel free to dip in and out. You can always watch this back again. But you just have to bear with me when I change pages. For 5 minutes, which today seemed like hours, I stood forlorn amongst my cases. To this moment I can see the shadows of the houses across the road and the sun shimmering on the white painted walls and fences. Life seemed suspended, and the whole village dreamed in the sun. Then it sprang to life as Jenny and a little Scottish terrier exploded from the gate of a walled garden. There was no more time for dreaming. It was wartime. We were young and excited, and a new life was about to begin. I was no longer alone. Like Robinson Crusoe, I found the island was inhabited. A gorgeous country weekend followed, good food, tea in an old-fashioned, well-kept garden, long walks and church on Sunday morning, and all the time the sun kept shining brightly. Soon it was over, and we were squeezed with our possessions into an old Ford Anglia, driving through the narrow lanes that led to Clobenwood Farm, and this is where it all began. My first impression was of a long drive sloping upwards with a large grey stone house at the end of it, and rising high in the background, hills dark against the sky with purple splashes here and there and right to left, fields of corn, some cut and some standing in stooks, others with the corn still growing, moving like a golden sea in the slight breeze, and the sun shining brightly over everything. Remember, I was just a town sparrow, and so much beauty was almost too much. I lived in the back-to-back houses in Leeds at the start of the war with my family. I was often hugged those first moments to me in the first few weeks when my skin, unused to so much fresh air and sun, was burned a dark brown, and when every muscle in my body felt as if I had been on the rack, when the effort to stay awake was almost a physical pain, and my mind was drugged with the silence and the scents. We had a pleasant social Sunday evening, sitting in the elegant drawing room, which I soon discovered was rarely used, in our Sunday best and on our best behaviour, and then we were sent to bed. The holiday was over. Wartime work had now begun. Monday, I awoke early to the sounds of birds and the lowing of cows, and by 6 o'clock we were downstairs in our unfamiliar riding breeks and cream shirts, and, to use a Scots expression, supping porridge. This, I discovered, was a morning ritual. We all had a bowl of porridge and cream, and then went out to milk the cows and returning to the kitchen for bacon and eggs at 8:30. I think back with shame on my first introduction to the cowshed. It smelt warm and sweet, and was soon to become my favourite place on any farm I worked at, but on this day it filled me with horror. Come on, Alice, help me out. The cows were so large and their horns so sharp, and their tails swished ceaselessly. Jenny, who had been born and bred on a Scottish farm, sat on her stool and started in to milk. A large, placid cow was selected for me, and I was told to sit under and tuck my head in. Nobody will ever really know the willpower it needed not to turn tail and run. But I sat under, and with fear in my heart and sweat on my hands, I tucked myself in. It was about the only thing I did do that morning. I tugged, I puffed, I squeezed, and I let go. My arms ached and perspiration ran down my back. And we need to go to the next page. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, getting the hang of this now. Isn't it great to hear a real story about the war, what happened? Not everybody were fighting, not everybody were in the army or the RAF. The women kept the country fed, and this is the continuation. But not a drop of milk ran into my pail. The old cow turned her head round to watch. I think even she felt sorry for me after a while, for leaning as far as the cow could tie would allow, she managed to lick my hair with her long, rough tongue. Quivers of sheer terror shot through me. I thought I was going to be eaten. Her long, filthy tail lashed me across the face and into my eyes. I'd never been so terrified in my whole life. I'd never seen a cow before, let alone had to touch one. All this time a sleek black cat sat on the ship and walk, washing himself, and I could almost swear he was laughing. In the background I could hear the swish of milk as other people's pails filled effortlessly. That moment it would have seemed conceivable that one day I would live on a farm with 100 head of cattle and revel in milking times. Soon 14 or 15 cows were milked, and Jenny was shrieking with laughter as she looked up from my empty pail to my woebegone face and said, "Get up, I'll milk and you watch." I remember the thrill when I got it the first time and I heard a thin, steady stream of milk hit the bottom of the old pail. But that wasn't the end of my troubles. Mucking out the shippen is hard work, but the problems depend on whether you're using the shovel or pushing the barrow. It isn't very difficult to get the muck onto the shovel and from the shovel into the barrow if you are young and strong. But for the uninitiated, to push that barrow full to the brim with a stinking sloppy mess along a walkway no wider than the barrow itself is a nightmare. Then to turn a corner at the end of the walk is well nigh on impossible. It was lucky for me that Johnny Barr had a sense of humour and endless patience. In no time at all, the impossible became possible. I could milk reasonably well. I could muck out unassisted. Then a few weeks later, another snag. One of the old cows calved, naturally with no problems. The calf was sweet, moving on wobbly legs. Almost as soon as it was born, and with the sentimentality of youth, I led it into a shed already prepared and let it drink milk from a bucket through my fingers. A new life was born, and all was well. My world, or so I thought. But the cow had to cleanse, and my education in the facts of life at that time was very scant. I was told to clear up the cleansing and put it on the midden. I fetched a barrow and a shovel with confidence, but this horrible mass was bloody and slimy, and it refused to go on my shovel. I pushed it and scraped it. I tried to trap it, but each time I lifted it a few inches, it slid back with a squelch. At last, I fetched an old sack, threw it over this thing, and with my head turned away and holding my breath because the smell was indescribable, I lifted it and threw it into the barrow, and then went behind the shippen and was violently sick. I think that must have been the ultimate, for I can't remember else out of the ordinary happening amongst the cows at Cloburn Wood. The rest of the summer moved on in a series of halcyon days, for this was a farm geared to manpower, not machines. With 50 acres of land, it was run by the farmer, 1 horseman, and now 2 LANDARMY girls. Nobody cared very much if it took 15 minutes to walk to the farthest field, when really it was only a 5-minute walk away. Just bear with me a second. Can't stop now, can we? Let's get at least to the next farm. The rest of the time spent looking into the burn that ran amongst the land was alive with fishes darting amongst the smooth stones on the bottom, or stood transfixed as the sun made patterns of light and shade across the heather-covered hills in the background. But by the same token, you were not expected to complain if during those long hot days of harvesting I think Granny's trying to tell me it's time to stop the chapter. We'll just finish this page. If during the... That's so funny. It's gone off. It's gone off. My screen has gone black. Oh my gosh. Well, does that give you a taste of life in the 1940s in the LANDARMY? And if you would like to hear some more, leave me some comments. Let me know what you think, and we'll continue reading. Either in the afternoons or instead of A Hotel Full of Dreams, which we finished tonight. So with tribute to all of our wonderful, wonderful heroes from World War II. It's Victory in Europe Day, as you all know, and that's a very, very special day, and it is in our family because there's Granny Alice and there is Grampy Raymond. 2 amazing people who influenced my life tremendously, and I wouldn't be where I am today without them. I certainly wouldn't be able to cook, let alone write, because they bought me my first typewriter. Although I haven't read that story of Granny's for 20 years. So I can honestly say I wasn't writing then, and it's strange how I listen to the way she writes, and I kind of write in a similar sort of way. A slightly longer sentence writer I am, but I just write how I speak. She, however, was a very measured lady who would have written the way she spoke, and that was much slower and much more, thought. So that's interesting, isn't it, for all of those who follow the stories we've been reading. It's quite funny how, there are similarities in the odd phrase. I keep thinking I would have written that, or isn't that a great phrase to use for the sun, or... So that's it. So I wish you a happy VE Day wherever you are, and great, well done to all of you having street parties and all the kids making buns. I think it's marvellous, and I really, really hope that every VE Day from now we keep educating our children more and more, and we keep those traditions and we bring them back, because the old street parties were fantastic. And it's just our way of saying thank you and respecting the memory of all those men, women, families who died in the war, through all the many conflicts on land, on sea, or in the air, and what happened in those times, because we're in another kind of war right now, and it makes you realise how very, very lucky we are. How very, very lucky we are. We're being asked to stay at home. We're not being asked to survive for a week on one ounce of meat and some vegetable broth. We're not asked to sit in the trenches, wait until our feet rot, and we can't walk anymore. We're not asking to get blown up and have, limbs missing, and we're not asking to be separated from our family for 5 or 6 years or even longer. Today is VE Day in Europe, but the war was still continuing in the Far East, in Japan, and the war was still going on. It was victory in Europe. It wasn't the end of the war, and prisoners of war were still humping stones and building bridges and, being smashed to pieces mentally and physically. But it's a really great thing that we're all remembering it today. And thank God we've learned how to love each other in this conflict and to renew that sense of community. So I hope you've enjoyed this afternoon's little reading. It's been so nice so you can meet Granny Alice and Grampy Raymond, because they're very, very special. They were very special people to me. I talk about them in the present tense because I know they're always there. And the way this photo's taken, it always makes me laugh because it looks like he's looking at me. So, lovely. Good old Gramps. And I hope you have a lovely time. Enjoy your buns and your VE Day celebrations, whether it be in gardens or, social distancing, obviously. But wherever you are, have fun and teach your children respect and what war is all about, because we're very, very, very lucky today in this generation, and may it never, ever happen again. So thank you for joining me again, and we'll see you, those of you who want to join tonight's reading group, which is the last episode of A Hotel Full of Dreams. And we'll be online, I would imagine, at 10:15 UK time, which is 11:15 French time. And don't ask me, but it's 7 hours difference between the US. So come and join us. Bye for now, everybody. Happy VE Day.